Okay, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're just going to be looking at how to generate a random number. Um, it's not terribly difficult, not terribly complicated, but there are a few things that you have to keep in mind anytime you're generating a random number. Um, so the very first thing you have to do is you have to actually import the random number package. So you have to import the library um, for the random number. And that is in the java.util library. So you want to import java.util.random. Okay, so you're going to need this line. And again, remember this has to go before the class statement and it should go below the package statement. So it's all part of, importing that Java library into the program. Once you've imported the java.util.random library, you can go ahead down here and again, just get rid of the comments. You don't need any of these comments. You're going to be entering in your own comments, so I just generally get rid of comments. That just kind of clutters the system for me. Yeah, so the next thing that you need to do is you need to create what's called a seed. Now, the seed of a random number is basically the way that the random number is generated. The seed is like a number that the random number is based on. So every time you generate a random number, it's based on a seed number. And that seed number can be a defined number or it can be I guess, a random number. And for the most cases, you want to have that generated as a random number, but I'm just gonna show you how to develop that seed. So your very first case is you have to develop this random seed. So we use the term random and then a variable name. And again, it doesn't matter what this is called. We could call this random, we could call this rand, we could call it whatever we want. In this case, I'm just gonna call it R, okay? And then we are going to create a new random and then in brackets, just have the brackets after that. Okay, so this is going to create what's called a random seed. Okay, so this line of code here generates our random seed. And then from there, we simply have to use a couple of methods that we have available to us to actually generate a random number. Now, when we want to generate a random number, we're going to use this random seed, this random idea here. And the seed is generally inside of these brackets. Now, because we're not defining a seed right now, it will generate a truly random number. But if we were to actually put a value in here, it would generate a random number for us that wasn't necessarily random. And I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, so if we want to now generate our random number, let's just do a really quick print statement. Okay, and so basically I'm having it print the random number is, and now I want to generate my random number. So to generate a random number, you've got a couple of options. It depends on whether you want to create an integer or a double. Um, so it's very similar to reading a character in from the scanner. So if you do R dot next int, okay, and then if you are generating a random number between 0 and another number, so for instance, if we want to generate a random number between 0 and 100, we can simply put in 100 here. We don't need to do anything else in order to generate a random number between 0 and something else. So if we wanted it to be between 0 and 50, we would simply change this to 50. If we wanted it to be 0 and 10, we would change this to 10. Anytime we're going from 0 to something, we don't have to include anything inside of these brackets. So I'm going to generate a random number between 0 and 100. All right. And then I'm just going to run the code. Okay, so you can see here it says the random number is 39, and that indeed is between 0 and 100. If I run the code again, I should get a completely different random number. You can see here the random number is 66. If I run it again, 63. If I run it again, 91. So you can see I'm generating random numbers that are between 0 and 100. Now, generally speaking, that is not the case. We're not always generating a random number between 0 and 100, okay, or 0 and whatever. Maybe I'll just take a moment just to show you that if I put 50 in here, it will only generate numbers between 0 and 50. Okay, so there the random number is 30, 48, 41, 41 again, 34. Okay, if I bring this down to 20, now it will only generate random numbers between 0 and 20. 7, 4, 0, 14. Okay, you can see that those numbers do fit within the range. So now, as I wanted to talk about, we want to be able to generate a random number between a range. Like for instance, in the dice rolls application, you are generating a random number between 1 and 6. And so to do that, you need to use a very specific formula. I'm just going to type the formula below this, and then I'm going to show you how to include it into the random statement. So basically, you want to take your high number, so whatever the high end of the range is, minus the low end of the range, plus 1, and then you want to multiply that by, so this is what's going to go inside the brackets. So it's basically going to be r dot next int, high minus low plus 1, and then at the end we want to add the low end again. Okay, so we're taking the high value minus the low value, and then adding 1, and then again adding the low value again. Okay, so that's how that statement will work. So to do that in a to do that in a regular statement, then we want to just plug that kind of equation into it. So let's say, for instance, instead of between 0 and 20, we want to generate it between 10 and 20. So if we're doing that, we want to take the high number. You can see here, this we're taking a high, what's your high end? So the high end is 20 because we're generating between 10 and 20. Our low end is 10, so we subtract 10 from that. And then we add 1. And then we have to then add the low end again, which is the number 10. So we have to add that low value again at the end of our statement. And then in order for this to actually work properly, we have to make sure that we have brackets around this entire statement, because we don't want this plus 10 to actually be 10 added on to the end of our statement. We want it to actually be part of the statement. So you can see we have a bracket here that closes here, but then we also have this bracket inside here that's part of the r.nextInt statement. Okay, so again, our high number minus our low number plus 1, and then we add 10, or we add our low number to the end of that. So basically what we're doing here is we're just using this equation, okay, in order to make sure that our number is between 10 and 20. So our high number is 20, our low number is 10. So let's just take a look at that and see how that plays out in a run. So we run our program, and you can see here the random number is 14. That's between 10 and 20. We hit play again. Now it's 12. Play again. 16. You can see it's generating a different number every time between 10 and 20. Now in your case, you're needing to use a dice roll application. So in your case, the random number generation is actually going to be between 6 as the high number and 1 as the low number. And then we're also going to add 1, and then we have to add 1 to the end of our statement because 1 again is the low number. So we're generating a random number between 1 and 6 in this case. Okay, high minus low plus 1 plus the low again. Okay, so then when we run that, you'll notice that we'll get a random number between 1 and 6 every time. So 2, 4, 1, 6, 2, 2, 3. Okay, we're getting a random number every single time we're trying to generate. Okay, so that's how we generate a random number. Now, at the very beginning, I was talking about a random seed. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this seed statement up here. When we generate this random object, when we create this random object in order to generate our random numbers, if we were to put a value in here, we would actually have a definite seed that would create the same random number every time the program was run. Okay, so for example, let's just take an example of this. Instead of doing this, let's go back to our original setting. So we had generating a random number between between 0 and 100. Remember, anytime you are generating between 0 and 100, you you don't need to put anything after the 0. Okay, or sorry, you don't need to put the 0 in. Okay, so then I'm just going to actually generate several numbers. Okay, okay, so you can see here I've got a random number generator that generates 5 random numbers, prints out each one. If I run this program, you'll see what happens. Okay, 21, 63, 41, 21, 41. If I run this again, those numbers are completely different. If I run this again, they're different again. Okay, so that's our random number generator. But if we were to put a seed in here, let's say we were to put a seed of 10 in here, watch what happens when we have this seed of 10 in here and we run this several times. So the first time we run it, it looks like we have random numbers, 13, 80, 93, 90, and 46. But if we run it again, notice we get the same numbers, 13, 80, 93, 90, and 46. If we run it again, 13, 80, 93, 90, and 46. The numbers are the same every time, and that's because those numbers are being generated based on this seed. So anytime you want to generate those random numbers, you want to make sure that this is blank. You don't want to have a seed in there, and then you can generate any series of random numbers based on what we've looked at. Okay, so that's it for generating random numbers. Hopefully that helps you with the dice rolls application, and I'll talk to you soon again.